Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Manish Gupta, the founder of National Law Training Institute and currently a fourth year student at the National Law School Bangalore. Today, we have a very special guest amongst us. We have Kriti Malik, who got a brilliant All India rank of 5 in recently concluded NLSAT 2025. Without wasting much time, Kriti, I would love to hear from you. We were definitely expecting a great rank from you, but how was your reaction when you saw a single digit rank of 5? How did you feel? How did your parents react to it?
I felt wonderful actually. I teared up, and my parents were also very happy. My mom also started crying,
Hmm.
and both my parents were traveling, so I was on call with them while I opened this result, and it was surreal. Like even until now, I've not really digested the fact that it's happened because if you think about
Right.
just one thing for 4 months, it's sort of you're used to stressing out about it. So I think I'm still a little, yeah, surprised.
Fair. Were you expecting this rank? We were definitely expecting that you will get in any scenario, but were you specifically expecting a single digit rank?
Not really, no. After the exam, I didn't know how to feel because my mocks had gone quite differently from the exam. Like I felt different.
Hmm.
So I would some days wake up very optimistic. Others, I would think I'm just hoping against hope. So I really didn't know
Yeah,
what to. Yeah.
right. Kriti, you talked about last 4 months. So can you tell us a bit about your preparation? Before that, I would want you to talk about your educational background. Where did you do your graduation from? And then how did you stumble upon NLSAT?
Right. So I studied politics and government at Sciences Po, which is a political science specialized institution in France, and its main campus is in Paris. I studied the Europe Asia track, and it basically had several interdisciplinary social science based courses, which was really great. I think that set me up well for taking this exam and studying law in the future. And that's where my interest in law began from this class on feminist legal theory. And then for my third year exchange, I was lucky enough to be able to come to NLS, where I had a wonderful experience. And initially, I was not planning to study law. Actually, I was completely against studying law. But then when
Hmm.
I came to NLS, I realized that it's not just fascinating as a means to achieve an end, but it's incredible as a discipline in itself. Like studying the law itself
Yeah.
also really opens your mind to so many new lovely things. So I decided I want to take this exam. I had heard of NLTI briefly when I was there, and then later somebody suggested that I came. Very glad that I chose to come to NLTI. And yeah,
Yeah.
so strategy, like my preparation, basically, I was working for 6 months in the Netherlands when I had started to prepare for this exam in the last 2 months, but it wasn't particularly religious at the time. Then, when I came
Okay.
back to I started preparing full time from January 1st onwards. And I had joined this coaching in Delhi called TLOI, after which I think around 15 Jan or so, I approached you. And then I started taking mocks from both the coachings, many mocks with you guys, and getting feedback, working on the feedback. So it was a really insightful process right from the start. And I think part B always had been my stronger suit. So part A took a lot of work, both in terms of accuracy and speed of reading, especially the latter. And then the
Right.
last month, basically, I think we'll delve deeper into that in a bit. The last month looked like I mean, every day of the last month leading up to the exam looked like a big mock in itself. So I would wake up, do part A, read the news, practice an NLTI sectional every day if I could, or like a sectional, or if I was doing a mock, then I would just do the mock in the morning.
Right.
Then afternoon I would start part B, and in the evening I would read up for the essay. So that's how like every day looked like a mock. So I guess somewhere it just got internalized, this entire uh, you know process.
Right. Did your friends at NLS also play a role in you ultimately deciding to come back here? Because I still remember a couple of people who knew that you were preparing with NLTI reached out to me and they said, "Bhai Kriti ka karwa dena." And
Oh.
so, and yesterday I reached back to them that "Bhai ho gaya hai." So Rushil had asked me to let him know about your results. So I sent him your graphic, and he was very happy about that. So yeah, Kriti, I wanted to know more about the last 4 months. So
Right.
it must have been full of ups and downs. But what I am assuming is since you have had that strong hold in English language, part A must have been a bit easier for you. But I still remember we had some conversations about part A, its cutoffs, and you were not scoring that good as you would have wanted in part A. So from
Right.
there to now here, what was your journey like specifically in part A?
Right. So part A, you're right. There was this point where I was scoring the same marks in part A consistently, and I couldn't realize why that's the case. And the journey from there looked a little bit something like this. Like I would read the news, and that helped. Reading the news is like the number one step for this exam. I read the news consistently, and that helped eventually. With every part of this paper actually, and
Fair.
keeping abreast with editorials, papers, etc. Finding varied sources, varied styles of writing was very helpful. Then for, I think for critical reasoning, I'll focus on critical right now. I watched Jay's video towards the end of the exam, and I completely changed my strategy for part A. Luckily, my reading speed had really improved by then, so I wasn't facing a problem with time. In fact, I decided to allot more time to part A. So I had started with 1 hour 15 minutes, then it went down to 56 minutes in part A, because 7 minutes dot per passage I was taking. And then I watched Jay's
Right.
video where he told us that you should read a paragraph, skim through it, underline the important words, and then reflect for a second on what the author is trying to say, then move to the next paragraph. That way you don't only understand it, but you remember what you've read. And that made a whole world of a difference. Also, reading the questions beforehand was not something I was doing. I started doing it towards the end, and that helped. The only problem was that in the final exam, I took a long time to finish part A, because suddenly the stakes became.
I've heard from a lot of students that part A was lengthier. Like they found part A specifically lengthier this year. So did that affect you in the final paper?
Well, I think part A was particularly easy this year. So I would say that threw me off a little bit because I wasn't used to seeing that. So I overthought everything, every question. I was like, maybe there's a trick here. I don't know. GK luckily was fine. GK this year was, apart from like 1 or 2 questions, not so tough. And I had also used really lovely resources to study for GK, YouTube, gazettes, for Hulk files and stuff. So I was luckily sorted for that. But critical reasoning, I think I just took too much time because I was overthinking, which left me with really little time for part B. Luckily that went well, but I had never done part B in such little time before. Like the essay had only 5 minutes left, so I just did it on muscle memory at the end of it.
So you not just watched Jay's video, but you strictly followed his footsteps also. He was also all India rank 5. Now you're also all India rank 5. Yeah. So all those who don't know who Kriti is referring to, he's Jesha, also an NLTI mentor, and he was all India rank 5 last year. Yeah, Kriti, so we'll go section wise. You talked about reading. So what all sources do you suggest for reading diverse and reading comprehensive news articles or editorials? One thing is definitely the Hindu, the Indian Express editorials. What else can people use or NLSAT 26 aspirants use?
So I would say read the Deccan Herald, read The Wire. I really enjoyed reading The Wire extensively for this exam. A magazine like Frontline by the Hindu is excellent. And when it comes to reading even the Hindu and the Indian Express, there's a strategy. Like what I did is I read very quickly in the morning with a sense of urgency. Whatever I read was very fast. And then in the evening, I enjoyed what I was reading on the Indian Express so that I could prepare for my essay. So both things keep getting fine. And for part A, just one more thing. There were 4 things that I did every day religiously for 4 months. One was I did editorials and stuff, reading the news. Second was that I watched Courts Today by Live Law. It is a brilliant resource when it comes to, it's basically a daily roundup of legal updates, 10 to 12 minutes every day. And just listen to it. It helps you with argumentation, it helps you with legal current affairs. It's really wonderful. Then I did the Hindu daily quiz. So I had a Hindu subscription. There's a daily quiz that they upload every day, 10 questions. So I did those. And then I read one tough article every day, like one extremely tough article, like my head would start hurting after it. So sometimes it would be ideologically uncomfortable for me. The other times it would be this, the writing style was very, very hard to follow. But that helped improve like my level in reading for sure.
Right. Kriti, so GK, you have already told about the sources that you refer to. Moving on to critical reasoning sections. Critical reasoning involves both the things. One is theory component like assumptions, conclusions, inferences, difference between conclusion, inference, all these things. So how did you prepare yourself for this theory component? Did you actually prepare this theory, or your strategy was more revolving around practice, that as you practice you will understand these concepts better, like assumptions, strengthening arguments, weakening arguments? So what was your strategy particularly for CR?
So mine was mostly practice centric. I did lots of mocks, I did lots of sectionals, and NLTI sectionals were really tough, timing wise and also content wise. Especially when it came to timing, I found in the beginning you guys give 6 passages for half an hour, and that's a lot more than is expected in the exam. So that was excellent practice for that. And also content, you already know, is great. Another thing that I used to do was for GK, this is static GK, sorry. I would
Yeah.
copy paste things that I found important in a document, and then I memorized it towards the end, which I found really helpful. Coming back to CR, I did use some resources online. I used LSAT, LNAT, and GMAT prep material. You can find it free of
Yeah.
cost, and it was quite helpful. But generally, my strategy for CR was introspection. Like I would sit and I would analyze every mock. I would introspect after
Hmm.
every mock, how I felt, exactly what I thought when I read what, and why that was the case. And then I worked on it. Weekends, I never took mocks. It was always workshop days, like sit, fix the problem, understand what's
Hmm.
the issue. Like in the beginning it was strengthening weakening, I saw a pattern, then that was fixed, then it became assumption questions, then that was fixed. So eventually every
Yeah.
time you come across that question, you go back to those workshop days and then you fix. I think those are more important than doing many mocks. So yeah,
Yeah.
first practice, then these like online practice materials also.
Kriti, from what I can infer is you are talking about the importance of analyzing mocks, and not much is said about analyzing mocks specifically in the NLSAT examination. Everybody knows that it is important to analyze mocks in the CLAT field and everything. But what
Right.
would you suggest? What would you say about the importance of analyzing your mocks properly after you have attempted one? Like in CLAT, we say that if you have not analyzed the mock, it is as good as you have not attempted the mock. So, what are your
Right.
thoughts on that?
So I think it's the single most important thing you can do is which is to analyze your mocks. You come back feeling a certain way. Oh, this went horribly, or this went really great, and the result could
Yeah.
be very different from what you expect. So you, like, nonetheless sit and think. Like for me, at one point, I remember I was having trouble like in time when it came to tough prose, like very difficult literature. Something very
Hmm.
philosophical, because it like the words were unfamiliar. So then I started
Yeah.
reading a lot of that. I wouldn't have had any idea that I faced a problem with this if I hadn't gone back to the mock. You also feel like you can only correct the wrong questions and you're good with the right one. Especially on the portal, you can see the red circles and just go back to them. But I would say
Hmm.
even going over the questions that you did right is really important, because in the moment you're confused between two options, and why that option
Fair.
was right is very important. Yeah, so really
Yeah.
do analyze your mocks.
Yeah. Kriti, so before we move on to part B discussion, I wanted to know your strategy for time management.
Hmm.
NLSAT is always known to be an exam where you are always racing against the clock. It is always a fight against the time. So how did
Hmm.
you manage your time in the mocks, and then how did it change in the final paper? Because as you already said, you ended up taking a little more time in part A. So how did your
Hmm.
strategy change in part B? Also, if you could tell me question-wise allotment for part B.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start with part A.
Yeah.
I had started off by taking about, this was when I was not timing myself, about 10 to 12 minutes per passage, and that reduced when I started reading much faster and started going less in detail. So just skimming through the passage eventually makes it, you realize that it doesn't make too much of a difference if you just skim and don't know every single word. That said, when you
Hmm.
underline things, you learn what words are important, and they might not be the keywords of the sentence. Like it may be a word like perhaps, which is unremarkable, but it tells you about the tone of the author, that he's
Yeah.
unsure, he's guessing something, right? So these things, they start appearing to you with practice.
Hmm.
Eventually I took, like I told you, 7 minutes per passage. Then I increased that to 8 in the mocks. And how, again, going over the questions really helped, because that I knew pinpointedly what to look for and what to underline. And also just skimming through the passage from start to end once, like very quickly in like 3 seconds, so that you have an idea of what the passage is about. I wouldn't even mind doing that towards the last few questions of the previous passage, but that's because I
Hmm.
had got a lot of practice. I did many mocks. Wouldn't advise that if that's not the case, because that might lead to some confusion. And in the final mock, I took around an hour and 20 minutes in part A, which was really not required, but that's what it took. And
Hmm.
the last passage I just had to skim through. Luckily, it was the Ranveer Alabadia passage, so that was
Hmm.
sorted. But yeah, and
Yeah.
then I had very little time left for part B. It's also important to bear in mind that at least 5 to 10 minutes go in logistical stuff, circling, and your
Hmm.
examiner might be. Luckily, I had a good examiner, but you really never know. Like there are many distractions. There was somebody reading out loud in the room that I was sitting in, so they were.
Hmm.
Sorry, one second. Yeah, they were reading their passages out loud, and that was very distracting. So you never know, keep 5 to 10 minutes buffer always. 10
Yeah.
is a bit, 5 is fine. And yeah, so part B, I had very little time left, and in my mocks, right from the start to the end, I took 10 minutes exactly for every legal reasoning question, which left me with generally 20 minutes for an essay, which is more than enough. And
Hmm.
yeah, that was how I allotted time. Part B timing, so the essay would suffer in any situation. The essay would suffer, as it probably did in my
Hmm.
final test. I had five minutes left, but yeah,
Okay.
that's still okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Kriti, on part B, another question that I would want to ask is,
Yeah.
what did you prioritize? Did you prioritize writing more, or did you prioritize writing less but with a better quality?
The latter, writing less but better quality. So I remember there was this point where I was doing part B questions every day. Like I had started for a few days, for like maybe a week. I started doing
Hmm.
3 legal reasoning questions every day. And I realized that it made the process very mechanical for me and very robotic, and it was unnecessarily pressurizing. And I realized that I really enjoyed doing part B in every mock, but this took
Hmm.
out the fun for me. So I stopped thinking on my feet. I started approaching it in a very dry fashion, and that showed in one of
Yeah.
my mock results. So then I stopped doing that. So really, just quality thinking on your feet, thinking creatively, and thinking as though you're not writing an exam. Like that's what worked for me. Every time I thought this is an exam, I must get good marks, it
Hmm.
went a little haywire. But when I thought, okay, I'm talking to someone, perhaps a professor at NLS or anyone that I like to
Yeah.
have a conversation with, and I need to convince them of this, that turned out to be better.
Right. Kriti, how would you say NLTI helped you in your preparation? Did your decision of enrolling with us paid off? Was it worth it? And would you recommend NLTI to future NLSAT 26 aspirants?
1000%. I would definitely recommend NLTI to any future aspirants. The feedback that you guys give is phenomenal. Every single question in so much detail. It really, really helps you. Like taking my arguments to their logical end was something that the mentors taught me mock by mock. And
Hmm.
also the online portal is so accessible. All the sections. This is more material than you can consume. And also just on the
Yeah.
customer service end, I felt very valued at NLT. I really cared for, even though I had joined late. I believe like most people came in October. So
Hmm.
all in all, phenomenal experience. I would really recommend NLTI.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Kriti. Is there any one piece of advice that you think you would want to give to future aspirants? Is there anything in particular that you feel is indispensable for NLSAT preparation?
Right. So there's a couple of things. I had written these down. So
Yeah.
I, yeah, I think if I had to narrow it down to two things only, it would be first,
Yeah.
be perceptive to how your relationship with the paper evolves. There was this time when I had done all forms of experimentation. I had started with my like mapping out my essay, introduction, first paragraph, then moved to part A, did two passages, moved back to the second paragraph, then moved back to part A, and kept shuttling between. And that worked well for me
Hmm.
because at the time part A was daunting. But then when I got comfortable with part A, I realized that I was doing better just starting from the beginning. So this changes, and be perceptive to that change so that you can adapt your strategy. And second is, I'm sure they've heard this a million times, but question everything around you. Like I had a lot of fun just looking around me, being like, oh, if this was illegal, I'm in a shop, someone's returning an
Hmm.
outfit. If this was a legal reasoning question, what are 3 points? What is a counter argument that I could use? And yeah,
Yeah.
structuring your thoughts, having clarity of thought is just really, really important. So that's it.
Yeah, Kriti, I would want to talk about one more thing. So being prepared on paper is one thing, and being prepared mentally is another thing. And
Right.
NLSAT tests both the things. We
Hmm.
have a lot of students at NLTI who, in the few initial jittery moments while giving the final paper, messed up their OMR sheet or just
Hmm.
couldn't recover because they panicked so much. So how did
Hmm.
you approach your paper? How did you prepare yourself mentally that today is my final day? I've been preparing for 4 months, and I will give
Hmm.
it my all today. So what did exam day look like to you? How did you approach the paper?
Right. So I had luckily prepared for a few mocks in unideal conditions. There was noise around me and everything, so I was kind of prepared for that element, the unforeseen element. Second, I was
Hmm.
also mentally prepared that the paper is not going to go perfectly, and if I try for perfection, I'm going to fail. So and that's very true. Like new points for my essay haunted me for 2 weeks after I did the one on compensating domestic work. And for 2 weeks,
Hmm.
every day I had a new point like, God, I could have written this. But I was mentally prepared for this beforehand. So I
Hmm.
didn't worry about legal reasoning too much, and I could move on to the next question. Excuse
Yeah.
me. But the day of the exam was very chill. Like I woke up, I was like, I'm not going to psych myself out. I'm going to be absolutely calm. I was not nervous. Everyone around me was panicking. So it was hard to remain calm. But
Hmm.
I had prepared really hard, so I knew that whatever happens, I can say that I did my best. So
Yeah.
yeah, I sat down, and as expected, like the tables were rickety, people were loud. It was exactly how I had imagined it. And
Yeah.
but yeah, once I started writing the exam, everything disappeared. Like I was just writing the exam, and even there, I think one part B question, I had to scratch the first few sentences and start over again, draw a star.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that what I write matters. It's okay if one question like goes haywire, like at
Yeah.
least the content matters. And then I wrote a better answer. So just don't let these things throw you off, is what I would say, because
Yeah.
that's the test. That's really the test, because time is the test. Every mark is precious, so there's obviously a lot of pressure.
Hmm.
Yeah, so just relax on the day of the exam. That's what I did.
Yeah. Kriti, a few more questions that NLSAT 26 aspirants wanted me to ask.
Yeah.
Very logistical ones. Did you print your mocks and give, or did you appear for them on the portal itself?
That's an important question. I started off with, so initially I had done online mocks only. Then I started to print them out. Both are useful online because it's very quick. You know exactly what your score is, and then obviously you're sending
Mm-hmm.
everything online, so you know it's easier. But eventually, like towards the end, writing your mocks is always better because you have that feel of reading a paper, and it's very different from reading a screen.
Yeah. Also,
Mhm.
did you attempt any mock on an OMR sheet before the final NLSAT paper? Like, did you have any experience of filling in OMR before?
Absolutely, yeah. So TLOI has all their mocks on
Mm.
OMR sheets. So that's how I
Okay,
knew how. Yeah.
fair. Kriti, you told me you have written down a few points. If I have missed out on anything, if I didn't ask you and you want to share it with other aspirants, please feel free to go ahead.
Sure, thank you so much. Let me
Yeah.
just go over this. Memorizing GK, I already said. Oh, yeah, make a document of advice to yourself. That really helped me. Mine was called capital bold letters, mistakes to avoid, but whatever, just advice to the self. And I jotted down points of mistakes that I made, even question numbers that I got wrong, things that I
Hmm.
cannot afford to do. And that was very helpful, both for part A and part B. I also wrote down certain legal principles in my part B document, which helped me. So you don't need prior legal knowledge. It's unadvised to use it if you do, but
Yeah.
just principles really help. Uh, yeah, practice a few mocks in imperfect conditions. That's fine. Uh, yeah, I listened to the In Focus podcast a lot for many years now, and I think that's also an excellent resource for perspective building for the essay. Um, that's yeah, use formal language, please. I like at least I
Hmm.
would prefer like for my mocks to have formal language, not casual words that we would use in day-to-day conversations. Don't exhaust yourself with part B practice. We already discussed that. Practice as much as possible. Like I really don't mean for anyone to get me wrong, especially for part A, practice, practice, practice. Part B also, but don't make
Hmm.
it torture for yourself. Like remember that there's a
Yeah.
level of creativity that you need right now in the moment for it. Yeah, and another document I made was called Fascinating or just Ideas or whatever. If I was reading something and I found it really interesting and I would like to use it in an essay in the future, I
Hmm.
copy pasted it. It was one A4 sheet or two maximum, but it was just ideas that I found inexplicably cool. So I wrote them down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that was quite helpful. And yes, that's about it.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Kriti. I'm very hopeful and I'm sure that all future aspirants will find this video very helpful. So thank you again for joining in and congratulations on this brilliant rank. We definitely look forward to seeing you on campus.
Thank
And
you.
again, thank you for agreeing for this interview.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Thank you.
everything.